How trauma and pregnancy stress can alter our genetic legacy. Epigenetics is a fascinating area of study. We now know that stress, particularly cortisol, is related to how genes are expressed. For instance, even if you carry the gene for breast cancer, it doesn't mean this genetic marker will turn into a disease. It's often the stress that essentially causes the disease to present itself. Epigenetics is the study of how the events that happen to you and your behaviors, such as traumatic events and trauma responses, can change the way your genes work. These changes don't affect your DNA sequence, but they can affect how your body reads that DNA. Research from 2019 found that stress during pregnancy is one way intergenerational trauma can be passed down. Parental stress during pregnancy is associated with children who have autism spectrum disorders, schizophrenia, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. A study from 2018 suggests a link between intergenerational trauma and depression. It found evidence that trauma can be passed between generations epigenetically, which means that trauma experienced by an ancestor might affect the way your genes are expressed. In addition to affecting the next generation, research has shown that trauma experienced by pregnant women can impact 3 generations: herself, her child, and her child's eggs. The epigenetics of trauma. Before your mother was born, your mother-grandmother, and the earliest trace of you were all in the same body. What your grandmother felt and experienced affected your DNA. Intergenerational trauma. Trauma that is experienced by one person in a family, for example, a parent or grandparent, can be passed down to future generations because of the way that trauma epigenetically alters genes. Here's how. Trauma can leave a chemical mark on a person's genes, which can then be passed down to future generations. This mark doesn't cause a genetic mutation, but it does alter the mechanism by which the gene is expressed. This alteration is not genetic, but epigenetic. Your ancestors' lousy childhoods or excellent adventures might change your personality, bequeathing anxiety or resilience by altering the epigenetic expressions of genes in the brain. The healing and protection of women is not just for women. Every human being is born through the womb of a woman and gestates in her body for 9 months. This makes the womb a sacred container and a divine portal through which life is created. In the unfortunate state of humanity, women on this planet have been violated and suppressed for millennia, creating imprints of trauma that carry over lifetime after lifetime in the matrices of our wombs. But similar to the women, men also can be affected by trauma, and this can affect their sperm. These imprints are then passed down genetically to the unborn children. And so the trauma has spread like a disease of the soul, passed down from mother and father to child through the generations. This is why it is so important that women have stress-free pregnancies. Trauma is a complex phenomenon that involves the interplay of biological, social, and psychological factors. It is not solely determined by one aspect, but rather influenced by a combination of these factors. When it comes to the impact of trauma on children, research suggests that genetic factors and the transmission of trauma through generations can play a role. This means that the experiences of previous generations, including trauma, can affect an individual's genes and subsequently influence their susceptibility to mental health disorders. The documentary In Utero from 2016 explores the idea that the environment in the womb can have lasting effects on the developing fetus. It suggests that maternal stress during pregnancy can affect the expression of genes in the fetus, making them more prone to mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and other disorders. During pregnancy, a mother's stress hormones can cross the placenta and influence the developing fetus. If a mother experiences high levels of anxiety and stress, the fetus may perceive the world as a dangerous place and adapt to this perceived threat. This adaptation can lead to the fetus being more vigilant and having increased levels of stress hormones before and after birth. The concept of the womb as the infant's environment before birth highlights the importance of a healthy and supportive prenatal environment. It emphasizes the need for pregnant women to manage stress and seek support to ensure the well-being of both themselves and their unborn child. Overall, the biosocial and psychological aspects of trauma, along with the impact of prenatal experiences, contribute to the understanding of how trauma can affect individuals from the womb and beyond. Intergenerational trauma. Understanding how pain is passed down, until someone works to heal it. If your grandparents experienced abuse, war, domestic violence, PTSD, discrimination, oppression, sexism, immigration, physically strenuous jobs, alcohol misuse, substance dependencies, unemployment, natural disasters, then your parents could experience repressed emotions, abuse, alcohol, misuse, attachment issues, difficulty, regulating emotions, immigration, discrimination, isolation, work-oriented mindset, codependency, untreated mental illness. The past experiences of your parents can have an impact on you, and this impact can manifest as trauma. Strenuous parent-child relationships, people-pleasing, anxiety, depression, burnt out, toxic relationships, struggling to be vulnerable, trust issues, approval-seeking, identity issues. While it's not entirely clear how intergenerational trauma works, it's important to recognize that it can have a significant impact on our mental health. It is important to understand that trauma is passed behaviorally as well, not only biologically. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health issues related to intergenerational trauma, it's important to seek professional help. By Lena Kravitz, Knowledge is Power.